Welcome to the Voice of Disruption. I'm Ken Rutkowski. Of course, our job every single time we're hanging out is to introduce you to people that are disruptive. They're changing the planet because of the way they think and the way they do things. Joining me right now is Mr. Lloyd Marino. Lloyd's joining us. Hey, Lloyd.
Hey,
good?
Ken. How are you?
All right, so Lloyd, you and I have known each other about a decade, and what I find interesting about you is you're always the same, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
Okay? But you are always disrupting things. So how do you maintain a consistent path of disruption?
It's a good question. You know, you don't realize you're disrupting things, right? You're doing what you're doing on a daily basis, following the trends, and really trying, in my case, try to take my customer base to the next level.
Okay, so let's go back a few years. The travel industry.
Yeah.
It was ready for massive disruption.
That's a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Well, it really wasn't. And you were part of the team that took disruption to a whole new level. What did you guys do?
So I was part of a team that was working for a corporate travel agency, one of the largest corporate travel agencies in the United States. Microsoft came to us and said, "We've got this proof of concept project we want to try. We want to show the world that our database technology, SQL can
Server.
scale to the transaction needs of the travel industry." It was an absolute flop.
The Microsoft project was a flop.
The Microsoft project, the product was a flop.
Okay.
So SQL was a flop. They had a problem with leading zeros, right?
See, I don't know what you're saying. Your bombastic phraseology is too copious
So
for my comprehension.
if you are familiar with Excel, right, you can't put a zero there. You have to put a hash and a zero for the zero to show up. And so that was part of the issue. We wound up using Oracle. We wound up building this thing called Microsoft Expedia.
Microsoft Expedia.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
And Expedia turned into, of course, one of the leading
Absolutely,
travel platforms
yeah.
that are out there. So when you saw it before it became what it was, did it become what it was when you saw it at the very beginning?
I mean, think of it. You're going back to the late '90s, right? Early 2000s. Remember those websites and how remedial they looked. And if you can picture that, that's exactly what Expedia was. It was a couple of forms you filled out. It queried a database, and it only used one GDS system. And GDS is the global distribution system for the airlines and hotels. And it was called WorldSpan. It was a Delta product.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's turned into, of course, one of the biggest travel sites that are out there.
Yeah, it was sold and bought several times, and now it's with a conglomerate.
But what it did was it changed the travel industry. It made it to where we can actually be the travel agent ourselves.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But it changed everything to where it became not just disruptive, but it, in theory, kind of destroyed some industries. It destroyed the travel industry as they knew it back then.
But created some cottage industries around that.
Without a doubt.
Yes.
So as you looked at it, did you know that you were going to transform? And did you see it as something that was going to be disrupted? Or did you kind of say, hey, we just got to do this project and move forward?
Yeah, it was kind of a proof of concept project. Can we prove that this is going to work? And the answer was yes.
Okay. The reason why I'm bringing all this up is that was a big deal back then. Moving forward, we hear words like edge, cloud, things are going to be stored out there, better known as big data that's sitting out there, right?
Yeah, we don't use that term anymore.
What do you use?
It's not big data. Everything is big data.
Right.
Right?
Everything is data that sits there, but utilizing data to make it smart is the key. Smart data.
Smart data is also probably slightly antiquated, but you know, we're talking about, you know, we're on the cusp of what could potentially be, you know, AI, right? Cognitive data.
Okay. And this is where I wanted to go having you here, because your job is to take extremely complex stuff and make it so average people like us can understand it, okay? First, should we fear all of this data that sits out there that predicts us before we even understand ourselves, or should we embrace it?
I think we should embrace it.
How do we do that?
It's my opinion. You know, the objective here is to make your life easier, right? To do things that will propel society, our species in general. I mean, think of healthcare, right? Healthcare has been around for hundreds of years. And there are a number of examples where companies have been around for hundreds of years and have all this information available.
But they're not utilizing it.
Yeah, it's like, just imagine mining. You're mining a diamond, right? Or you have these natural resources. Imagine natural resources.
Okay.
So the data is the actual natural resource of the organization. They've got to be able to mine it, right? So if it was a diamond, they'd mine it. But then they have to do something with it, which is the most important thing.
And that's what no one's doing.
That's what
they haven't been doing it.
Exactly. Why is Kodak
where Kodak is?
Yeah.
So because of all this data that sits out there, you can kind of predict the future. That's the goal. You use past historical information to determine where the outcome is in the future.
So a computer's much more geared to finding trends and doing analysis on things and much faster than we can do that.
So someone like you should be working with all the big companies out there that have been having this mining of data that just sits there. Does data become old eventually? Does it get
Of course
dust?
it does. Sure.
So how do you know if your data is it's not necessary anymore? It's not useful.
Yeah, and I should retract it. It depends on the data.
Okay.
So data about people, it becomes dated really quick.
Okay.
But data about specific science and industry, that stuff stays pretty relevant. So a great example is you look at GM, been around forever.
Okay.
Right? They bought a stake in Lyft.
Lyft, okay.
They did it for a reason, right?
Why?
Because GM knows a lot about automobiles. They know a lot about fleet management, and they have all this information. So they're positioning themselves for the autonomous industry. And a lot of the bigger companies that have been around forever, another example, Disney is a great example. They just bought Fox Studios.
Right.
Right?
Huge acquisition.
Huge. And they bought them for what? For the streaming.
No.
Absolutely.
Really? They just bought it for the
Yes.
streaming because they want to create a platform that rivals Netflix.
You got it,
And that's
man.
where they're going after.
Yep.
I thought they bought it because they wanted to make sure all the Marvel was all under one house. Maybe it's me. They wanted Stan Lee in all their movies. Lloyd Marino is joining us. Lloyd is a technologist. He also predicts the future by utilizing tools like data to understand outcomes. He works with some of the biggest companies around the planet doing this. So why can't we use things like big data? What term do we want to use since you don't like it?
That's fine.
And predict traffic and fix it. Because I would say that certain things are repetitive and consistent. Traffic is certainly one of those. Can't we use data to figure out ways to fix traffic issues around the world?
You said the word ways.
Yeah,
You know?
Waze was one of those tools, but it's actually clogged things up even more now.
Yeah, so is Google. So, until the computers can actually make the decisions about traffic, you're always going to have this issue.
So autonomous inside the cars are
Yeah.
what's going to do it. So all of a sudden now AI is inside our cars, right? And we hear about the whole idea of Skynet, and all of a sudden AI outthinks us and realizes, doesn't need us anymore, and we're gone. I know we hear about this, but it's kind of like the flatlanders that are out there that actually believe the world's flat. They believe AI is going to destroy us. Go into the future. Will AI ever really become an issue?
I don't have that answer, man. But
No?
I'm of the belief that if we're responsible about what we do, then that shouldn't be an issue.
So Lloyd, as you look at companies today, and I know you work at some of the biggest ones out there, do they actually understand the way technology should evolve inside their business?
Ken, by this time, I would have thought that business leaders would be on board with tech within their organization, and it just blows my mind that it's still at arm's length. I still have an IT team, they'll take care of it.
Okay.
But what we see is that the IT team doesn't necessarily understand the business.
Right, makes sense.
And the business leaders don't want to understand the tech stuff.
They totally put a wall between the two of them.
Yeah.
Why do they do that? Is that just an old way of thinking?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it's an old way of thinking. I think you don't have to understand this stuff at a real deep level. You don't need to know why a router does what it does or a firewall does what it does. You just need to know and understand that there's a certain level of automation that you need within your organization to be able to compete.
But Lloyd, isn't everything intertwined in the businesses of today?
It's an ecosystem.
So it has to have a connection with all the CXOs, CFOs, CTO have to be connected to everyone out there. But you're still saying that they're almost in their own separate spot.
Every company has an ecosystem.
So how do you move them all together? How do you do that?
You have to look at process and procedure within an organization, and it's got to flow from beginning to end.
So how do you do it? Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's so technical I won't understand it, and the CTO's job is to make it work, and I don't need to talk to them. How do you bring it together?
It's not only the CTO; it's the entire organization. So that information that starts with sales, for example, in a CRM system, has to flow from beginning, from cold call, all the way to delivery of the product.
Okay.
And
So if technology is underlining of all of it,
which it is, and we all know it is.
so then how do you make that part of the overall conversation? Is it because it's too technical on your side and no one really understands?
Well,
and
I think that's what personally I'm
you
good
do.
at.
Right. You make it so it's easy to understand.
I'm technically bilingual, if you will.
Well, I like that.
Right. So I understand business and I understand technology and I understand how to make you as a business leader understand
Okay.
what the underlying technology does.
So as business leaders watch what we're talking about and they have that fearfulness of, I don't understand what that person's doing, how do you bring that CTO or that technical side of a business closer to the center of the ecosystem, even though it's there, but make it part of that
It's
conversation?
examples, it's layman terms, it's being able to equate what the business leader knows to a layman, to layman language.
This is what you do. So if you were able to transform the travel industry so many years ago, I believe the IoT, Internet of Things, moving
Yeah.
forward is the biggest disruption that's about to hit all of us.
You're talking about big data. That's loads of data about to hit the market with all the IoT stuff.
Everything is watching us, tracking us, listening to us, right? How do we take that data and apply it to our businesses and utilize it? Are there companies that are doing this, or is this something that there's an opportunity for?
And I think every company's different. They have to look at the opportunities within IoT in order to be able to blossom into something that makes sense.
Do you have an Amazon Echo sitting at your house?
I do.
Yeah. Do you have a Google something at your house?
No, just
No, but you
Amazon.
feel comfortable with all that. You're not fearful.
Yeah,
And do you think that's one of the biggest disruptions moving forward is IoT?
I do. Yeah.
Is there anything else?
You know, your refrigerator talks to you now, so
Mine doesn't, but
mine does.
yes, it does. And they're expensive. So once that, I think, comes down at a more affordable level, then everyone's refrigerator will be doing it, right? Because I think that's what happened to Amazon. It was fairly expensive to get an Amazon Echo, and when it started coming down price, then it became more manageable, right? So Lloyd, I'm happy you at least help us understand where things are going, and that is we need better dialogue between our tech and our companies, and when they come closer together, the data actually means something.
True.
Right?
Yes.
Lloyd Marino, thanks a lot for hanging out with us
Ken.
on Voice of Disruption. We have a lot more going on. VOD, Voice of Disruption. Let's find out who else is disrupting our world. We'll be right back.